Hey, howdy do out there, everyone. My name is Michael, and welcome to another installment of the sketch series here on the Duke Corner, where I just doodle some random things for practice and fun. Playing a bit off of what I learned in the last week's Wolfwalker episode, I was challenged by my brother to draw one of my old D&D characters, this little wild girl, Fiah, who was inspired by Wolfwalkers when I first made her. I had already drawn this once off camera, but I came to the sort of dead-end feeling that what I drew wasn't Fiah. I had no idea what I wanted her to look like, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with the picture I made. It wasn't a bad picture, I just knew it wasn't Fiah. So with that in mind, I hit record and decided to take a spin at granting her a much nicer and well-thought-out design. Though you'll probably see me flip back to the original once or twice for reference on the details and colors. I was especially excited to get started with this because I have two songs from a composer called Peter Crowley, both in what I suppose you could call the Spirit of Freedom collection. One called Spirit of Freedom, and then a sort of sequel called Running Free, which I've thought of as my sort of headcanon theme song for Fiah for such a long time. And listening to them in the background while I drew this picture and adding them to the video later as background music just really pumped me up for the whole design. So to start off, what I'm doing here is just playing with some body types. I wanted her to look tall and agile, as well as sort of soft and playful, and give her the right amount of wild features to look like the beast druid that she is. The only thing I already knew about her look was the dress she's wearing, which is actually just a really big shirt that she rolls up into the sleeves and bunches all up into a dress. Hence the poofy arms and belly, and you'll later see I actually took into account where she gets the cloth for the belt by adding some tears into the bottom of her shirt. You'll see as I draw here that I almost worked like a neural network, creating many generations of a thing that I liked, adding a few new features, deleting copies that failed my inspection, and then replicating the copy I liked to repeat the process until I'd designed something I enjoyed. Fiah is a wild girl. In D&D, she's what I like to call a spiritwalker, a form of druid that projects forms of animals from themselves while their body remains somewhere else safe, so they can defend nature from a distance and take up basically any animal form for any amount of time, as long as they don't die, which has some pretty striking consequences to them. So for all you D&D fanatics out there, it's nothing like the Moon Druid. It's much, much more dangerous, actually. In the game, she's also a lot more wolfy, being closer to a shifter or a werewolf than a human. In that vein, part of the fun of this challenge was to try and add in all the features that made her human form look a little more wolfish. I gave her pointier tipped ears, a mane of fluffy hair, because I love fluffy hair, furry patches on her hands, feet, and face, some dirt scratches on her knees, and a lot of sharp shapes, especially around her face, such as her sort of oddly dipped-in eyes and her big brown nose with the pointy bottom. Finally, after sufficiently dirtying her up and adding hundreds of cute little freckles, probably a bit too many, but what can I say? I think they're cute. I began the fun of testing my creation with expressive poses and faces to get an idea of if my design sufficiently filled all the boxes and roles I needed it to. You never know. Maybe she could be in a show someday, or perhaps a webcomic. I've been thinking about that some lately. As I do this, you'll see I slim down on her details quite a bit, stripping away what I don't need and redesigning to fit the moment, until even a few drawings from now she looks pretty different. Not so vastly different she's unrecognizable, but different enough. And I think in a good way. For instance, I showed my father one of these sort of middle grounds versions, and he said she looked a bit mousy. Now I didn't know how to take that other than she looked like a mouse, so I widened out her ears and nose, I softened her face, flattened the angle of her eyes, and toned down that very overbearing peak I tried to draw in her mouth. Oh, and before we get into the next segment, here are actually some bonus pieces I drew after I was finished with the video. I drew her both as a wolf and with some big wool socks and a poncho for winter, with her dress all tucked down. I really like these and I just wanted to poke them in there, just for funsies. For the next little while, all I do really is just play with her poses and expressions while I tweak little bits of her design. So I'll just be quiet until we get into the dive. Hey there! That didn't take too long, did it? Wow, it's amazing how 45 times speed really trivializes several hours of brainstorming and design work. Not even counting what I did on paper, but my fault for being slow, I guess. So we did our dabble, now it's time to dive into the finished piece. I really struggled with this because I had a very specific pose in mind, and I had failed dozens of times before, on many different characters, to attempt this pose. But after about 20 attempts or so with Fiah, I actually finally got it, and God was it exciting. I first figured it out on my sketchbook, and the first thing I did was run to my computer to start recording my discovery. Like the relief you get when you're trying to do something, but you know it's in vain because you know you're going to fail, but then you don't know why you're trying. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, you just succeed, and you're like, oh, well, that didn't take so long at all, it did it. It really wasn't that hard in the end, huh? After getting in the color to her little pounce here, I had an afterthought that she needed something to growl at. So I stuck a little bunny down there, just chillin', not caring at all. I think it adds a little sweetness to her in the moment. Takes this whole moment of her being aggressive and turns it into, well, she couldn't even scare a bunny. Now, I'm no good at backgrounds, but this charcoal brush in Krita, I think, basically did all the work for me. It's crude, but it almost complements the smoother, more finished look I gave Fiah, and it sort of makes a foggy forest vibe behind her. Tell me what you think about that. And that's Fiah, all done. Although I might make some more tweaks to her in the future as I just keep drawing her more and more to practice. All in all, this was a really good experience, and a lot more enjoyable and productive after learning what I did last video. I think you'll see that I used a lot of what I learned from my past drawing styles and tricks to get the look I wanted here, and the resemblance to the Wolfwalker style is pretty obvious, which I think I actually kinda like. I think I also made some pretty noticeable improvements as to how I went about this and how the drawing came out in the end as well, so that's all very nice. So do tell, how did you like it? Any improvements to be made in the way I make these videos? I want you all to enjoy them as much as I do making them. Perhaps you have a suggestion for something you want me to draw next. Or you'd like me to just keep on the theme of drawing D&D characters and things from stories. I know I would certainly like that. And hey, if you did enjoy, don't forget all that like and subscribble stuff to help me get out there on the algorithms. And until next time, farewell.